zoom in on that art, be like, guess the creature type. Everyone's getting goblin. I feel like the second one is like asshole, miscreant, or rascal, not wizard. Does anybody ever pay for smothering type?
In theory.
Take this one. Red Rover, send worthless token on over. So for anybody who is not here for part 1, this is Comedian. They are one of, if not the best CEDH player in the world right now. They also offer coaching, so if you want to be a better CEDH player, check out Comedian on YouTube. I believe you're on Blue Sky as well. They are phenomenally good, phenomenally eloquent. They're very good at communicating why cards are good, why decisions are good. And today I have them talking about butt stuff. So what I've done is I've defined what I call the 5 tiers of CEDH clenchability. This clenchability refers to your nethers when you see this card in the command zone of an opponent. And so up at the top, we have Diamond Producer, self-explanatory. Then we have Deep Clench. Moving down, we have Kegel King. Finally, we have Trickle-Down Economics and Trusting Farts. These are the tiers of like how relaxed you are, how tight do you think you have to play. So it's somewhat related to how powerful these commanders are, but it is not a one-to-one with, commander good, I have to tense up. It's like, yeah. How worried do you get? How nervous do you get? Or well, we're going to go in descending order. Previously, we did, I think, the top 12, and the meta has moved around a little bit since last time. So I grabbed 8 more, but it's not perfectly like 13 through 20. We're going to open today with number 11, the new Nadu, in the words of Comedian, Hashiton. So Hashiton, you can discard creatures to pay 3 mana to get copies of them. Ian, how fucked up is this?
Man, so yeah, as I mentioned, this is perhaps like I'm kind of known for kind of being on the ball with analysis of cards, and this was the biggest foot and mouth I've had in maybe my entire career. I was so convinced Hashiton was gonna come in and just warp the format and the efficiency of its mana value combined with the ability. It's good, but it's just good. Like, it's not amazing. Once again, lack of inherent card advantage in the command zone is a real downside. I was a big old dingus on this one, so I'll own that shit.
But it is obviously still playable if it's broken into, I think it's number 11th. It has more than 1% meta share. And so the way I understand people are winning with this is like they discard some type of great big advantage engine. And with many cards in hand, you discard like, I mean, how are you winning with this?
So yeah, let's break it down by a couple aspects, and it's also worth noting, and I think this is a very interesting point. At least for a time, actually the best performing Hashiton runs, including my top 4 run with it, and the person who won with it literally the next weekend, like the 2 weeks it was out. It was like top 4 in a win. Those weren't on EDH top 16 for a really long time, so the deck actually even looked worse than it actually was, right? But, and then, every time I do well with the deck, because I'm known for playing a bunch of different decks, people are like, well, it's just Ian, so that doesn't count, right? Yeah. And so this becomes the interesting conversation with decks like this. But I will say, the Hash Slinging Slasher, as we call him in the community, is a really interesting deck, because there's a couple different ways that you can win with it. Honestly, the best way is it's like one of the best Oracle Consult commanders ever, right? Like, obviously, the blue-black, card's good, right? But it's specifically this idea that at any point, right, whether you, and especially if you already have a discard outlet on the battlefield, right, you never know whether your opponent is just using a Tainted Pact or a Demonic Consultation, or to actually get value, or if they're actually just exiling their whole library to win at instant speed, right? Because at some point you can just go, oh yeah, this problematic spell's in the stack, I'm gonna have to Demonic Consultation to answer it, and everyone's like, yay, save us, and then you're like, I need more Vertigmo. What are you doing?
So with that in mind, even if its win rate's not great and dropping, does that put it high up on the tier list because all of their decisions are potentially a dramatic musical stinger? Like the horror movie could be starting at any time?
I'm going to have to put this one right in the middle, actually. And the reason for that is there's also the uncounterable Shroom combos, which is actually worth noting too. For those who aren't familiar with Shroom of the Hegemon, because you're not 8,000 years old.
Or Kuro Hitsuki specifically.
Yeah, or Kuro specifically. Fun fact, because of the way Magic works, because sometimes the rules make sense and sometimes they don't, if you discard a copy of Shroom what's going to happen is the Hashaton would then see Shroom in the graveyard, right? Whatever the fake version of Shroom will see the real Shroom. And then it will try and reanimate it over and over again. But because of the way the legend rule works and state-based actions work, it'll be put back in the graveyard by the time its own reanimate ability would be put on the stack. Meaning, if you have fake Shroom on the battlefield, it will constantly reanimate the real Shroom and legend rule it to death and then be able to reanimate it off its own ability. So if you have like a card like Tiny Bones joins up, or any card that says when something dies, ping, when something enters the battlefield, ping, anything like that. Now all of a sudden you have this uncounterable, I discard Shroom and I win the game immediately due to the, not immediately, opponents can still remove stuff, right? But like it's pretty hard to interact with. There's no spells in the stack. It's just this uncounterable win condition. The only problem is you have to play bad cards to make it happen, right?
You have to play Shroom the Hegemon.
So for that, I mean, I have to put it in like the middle of this clench tier in the sense that, and maybe even a deep clench. The problem is all the best Hashaton pilots know that the secret to playing Hashaton is that you can't care about Hashaton.
Let's move on to Atali. So this is, for anybody in chat who has not been cursed to play against this is a Gruul card because of this flip cost. On ETB, you exile from the top of every player's library till they hit it on land. This becomes better in CEDH because we all start running good cards again. Very tremendously funny and casual, and then shockingly playable in CEDH because you can steal good stuff sometimes.
Atali is my favorite commander. It is maybe not the best commander, but it is my favorite. I absolutely love this commander. It is absolutely so much fun. It is like one of the decks that convinced me that you can still actually play red in this format as like, I mean, I got it tatted on me, right? Like red is my favorite thing, right? And so the ability to be like, yeah, Seething Song is CEDH playable. Let's send it.
Let's like, fucking go. Who misses Jeweled Lotus? Not us.
And honestly, I was so okay with those bans at the time. But like the one thing that broke my heart was that Atali was like way worse, right? And the fact that nowadays it's still playable makes me so happy,
For Atali, because I have not played very much Gruul. The only CEDH level deck I've ever piloted is Tayam, which we're going to be talking about later today. But with Atali, so this was the higher level, the higher up in Magic I go, like in casual, I love, or not even in casual, but in kind of the upper echelons of casual, I do love Storm. And then when we get into the part where every spell is really good, I start to be like, okay, motherfuckers, you need some rules. I'm like, your room is messy, you're staying up too goddamn late, you've had too much Coca-Cola, you're gonna have some goddamn parenting. And this was also months and months ago. Like, this was pre-bans that I was trying to do Tayam. But Atali in Gruul, I feel like, what tools do you have to solve any problems? Like, are you just being like, I fucking hope nobody tries to win before me, dinosaur?
Yeah, so Atali's weird because it's fast enough to be considered a turbo deck, but it's like the people who consider Atali like a turn 2 deck, because yes, you do play Atali on turn 2, but you don't win on turn 2. Easy. So the idea is that like you kind of just try to become as much of a problem as possible as early as possible, right? And yeah, the deck is like easy to be underestimated playing a Gruul deck, right? Like, but there are really interesting aspects of it, right? Like you can have a Nature's Claim, you can have your creature removal in red, right? There's a lot of really good burn spells. Like, I can't tell you the amount of times I've won games on Atali because people are like, okay, I've exhausted all these blue players, I could Taxi and Probe to their hand, and then I'll like Pyrokinesis their win condition, and they're like, what?
I want to pull it, because there's a bunch of spells that like you'll reference that I don't know, and I feel like the CEDH pilled members of my audience will know. That's pretty funny. Red Force of Will.
Yeah, it's literally Red Force of Will, exactly. Yeah, I love Pyrokinesis. There was one time in which I was able to top 4 with Atali, and I took out two Rog Racks and an Esper Sentinel, specifically with Pyrokinesis, and it like won me the game. It was great.
They have a few tricks up their sleeve, but they're mostly just trying to slam. They are going to rob you, and you're not sure how they're going to rob you. How nervous are you getting on the average deck?
Yeah, so Atali is a clencher. And a deep clench, I will say, because even if you're playing against a bad Atali pilot, the real thing that makes you fully just scoop up right there is the fact that Atali pilots, I call it the dino binary, right? You exist in this world in which you are performing actions that are or are not dino, right?
So gender's not a binary. Dinosaurs are. Dinosaur decks are.
Rituals are so dino, right?
Okay,
Counterspells,
yeah.
root stacks pieces, so not dino, right? Like it's a pretty easy binary. If it allows you to like put on the sunglasses and accelerate, like that is what dino is, you know?
Yeah.
Even if they are not necessarily the the killer with the dinosaur, the raptor that's going to take you at the end of the game. The problem is people play Rhystic Study, and so bad Atali pilots will still be existing on the dino binary. They'll have the sunglasses on. They're like, we're going down, boys. And they'll just put the foot on the gas. And then your opponents are like, cool, we have 15 cards in hand, and you didn't do anything to make it not easy to stop you. And they're like, dinosaur.
None of this would be possible without support from our highest tier Patreon members, so please join me and Little Nadu as we take a moment to thank Badger King, Sussedin, Christian B, Ryan A, Adam S, Solar Movie, Biggest Dickus, Kyle, Jess HW, Alpha Dog 2064, Crimson Viper, Zelenor, Otterfire, Dad Out for Milk, Kyler P, Bolus Brigade, Derek H, Phelan, B Leave, Dungeon Masters Consortium, Zach G, Bobby Joe Lord, Talamar Von Geist, Troper and their 37 different identities, Bradley T, Bo, Beefcake, and Silky Wilkie. Thank you all, and enjoy the video. Hi everybody, welcome to the Mango Money Moment, a new segment that exists only because YouTube has told us that if their automatic mid-roll placer doesn't believe that my video has enough dead air in it to constitute a transitional phase, they will not put monetized ads in the middle, which can really cut into the editor's leak budget. So we're going to have these moments where we just stop and stare for a little bit.
Before we get Ian your storied opinion on this card, I'm going to tell a very short story time about my first time playing Krark and how the deck immediately went from trusting farts to Diamond Producer in the space of 1 minute, which is the deck is mostly based around Krark the Thumbless, who is when you cast an instant or sorcery, you flip a coin. If you lose, spell bounces to hand. If you win, you get to copy it. So you're doing some type of non-deterministic storm value chain type thing. And I was playing against Scott, and he was still learning the deck. And he got Krark and Sakashima out. And I think the last piece was like either Stormkiln or Bergie or something. And he went to cast a spell, lost the flip, and went, oh, fuck yeah. And I had been like deep in my own hand at that point, and I was like, whatever, I probably only care if he's like chain copying some fucking Izzet combo. How do I put together my Thoracle Consult? It was still one of my first CEDH games. And then I heard him go, okay, lose the flip back to hand, perfect. And I just shat my pants on the spot. I was like, what do you mean perfect? And it was because there's a few things. One of those things where I think it was like Gut Shot. And so because it was Phyrexian mana, he like got a Magecraft trigger and then got the spell back to hand. So Scruffler, it's not that the goal is always to lose the flip, it's that their goals are beyond your understanding. There are a ton of ways for like winning the flip to be really good, and there are also a ton of ways for if they lose the flip and the spell does not cost very much mana, getting it back to hand is good because you are drawing cards for casting spells or you are getting mana for casting spells. If it's Phyrexian, like Git Probe or Gut Shot, you're just like, oh hell yeah, free Magecraft trigger. What do you think about it, man?
So this one I'm already going to say is at minimum a deep clencher, because this deck is one of the, like, I already mentioned how Storm is in the format, right? Like, if you have a competent pilot who's playing Storm, look out, right? My only complaint is, like, if... So first of all, I'm a statistically unlucky person. I tell people this all the time, and they don't really get it. And then they see me play games, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that involved a little bit of variance, and it just blew up in your face." Okay,
so you're Bane. You're Bane. You were forged in the darkness.
Yes, exactly. So I will never play Krark, but I respect pilots who do. Right. First of all, they're all crazy. I like, as much as I love so many Krark players, they're all batshit because they walk in knowing they could perfectly navigate the course of a game and lose to a coin flip, and they've accepted that reality, and to me that's baffling. Like the idea that a thing completely out of your control determines the course of your game is like psychotic to me. It gives me such anxiety, right? So it can't be for me. But that being said, Krark is, it is one of these commanders where, especially with the second copy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of mentioned in alluding to a fun fact. I actually also coached Scott on that deck list when he was first learning it. But the idea is a lot of the time when you have 2 copies of Krark, and like that's 90% of the deck, like getting multiple Krark copies.
Yeah.
Win-loss is broken. Right? When you win one and lose one, because it basically means all of your spell have buyback 0, right? Which is broken. Like that is like, imagine, let's just talk about like Rite of Flame, right? 1 mana, 1 red mana, make 2 red mana. That's a very good card. Allows you to go up 1 mana every single time, right? Now imagine if you can keep playing it over and over again, it's basically infinite mana, right?
Right.
Now, obviously, it's not going to work out every single time, but also the more Krark clones you play, or the more Krark clone doublers you play, things like, let's bring up Harmonic Prodigy, right? Like one of easily the most broken cards in the deck. And this doubles any wizard triggers. Krark is a wizard. Not only if you have Krark in just Harmonic.
Somehow, by the way.
Yeah.
I feel like zoom in on that art, be like, guess the creature type. Everyone's getting goblin. I feel like the second one is like asshole, miscreant, or rascal, not wizard.
Yeah, he does not strike me as a wizard either, but hey, you don't got no thumbs, so.
Known trait of wizards lacking one of their fingers. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is deep clench. And then would you say, like, if you knew the person and knew they were a good Krark pilot, does this become diamond producer, or is the diamond saved for good coin flips?
Yeah, if I'm playing a mid-range deck, I could easily see them transitioning into a diamond producer. If I'm playing a turbo deck, I'm not as worried about this deck, because they take a minute to set up. But like they make other mid-range decks look like fools when they have the engine online, because you just can, like, you're basically once again spending like 3 counter spells for every 1 counter spell that they have in hand, which is untenable.
Right. It's like, oh, you drew 5 cards. Well, each of my cards turns into 5 cards, which turns into 10 cards. They're doing like close-up magic while you're still playing the card game.
Upsettingly accurate description.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one, who it was weird as hell to me that this guy became CEDH relevant. We're talking about a 40k commander, Marneus Calgar, who I learned to accept this after I was like, okay, it is Esper, and it does say draw a card, and technically infinite mana dump. I doubt that's one of like the most relevant things for him, but I've learned that like that's a box you can check off as a CEDH commander. And so is the main thing here is this a Hashatan thing of play good Esper, worry about him later, or is it like, no, I'm tactician maxing and I'm vomiting tokens to pick up my deck?
So Marneus is far and away the best Esper commander, and it's sort of not even close. And the thing that made that happen was not Marneus's printing, because if you might have, like, anyone who's been paying attention to the format for a long time might have noticed, Marneus was not a very good commander for a really long time. And the thing that kept him back was the little goblin known as Dockside Extortionist, because most of the tokens that you can make in the format are from enchantments, and they make artifact tokens, and that was a really quick way to concede to the nearest Dockside player.
Every pre-ban Zatali player just looking at you hungrily.
Oh, full drooling. Then they said, oh, actually, we'd like to clip your ankle weights, and Marneus Calgar said, thank you very much.
So that was their Rock Lee moment.
It was absolutely their Rock Lee moment. And so now you look at this format with cards like Lotho, Corrupt Sheriff from Lord of the Rings, with fun cards like Smothering Tithe is the best card in the deck.
Is this the moment where I get to shill for Tataru Taru?
Oh yeah, this is like actually a CDH staple, funny enough.
The little dumb baby! Okay, so effectively it reads, whenever you make a treasure, also draw a card.
Yep.
Pretty okay.
Yeah. So, as you can imagine, I don't know if you've ever heard of a card called Smothering Tithe, which was already jokingly referred to as White Omniscience. I played a casual game once. Somebody untapped with 70 Smothering type treasures, and we were just like, do what you must. We've accepted it. Yeah. Yeah, and in a format dominated by heuristic study, it turns out smothering is pretty.
Oh,
pretty.
does anybody ever pay for smothering type?
In theory.
So the game plan's pretty straightforward. They're going to become richer than God. How nervous does that plan make you?
I think I'm going to leave it right there in the middle. And the reason because with any Esper deck in this format, Esper is like, I'm going to sound corny here, right? But like Esper is like a way of life for a lot of players, right? Where there's a lot of players who really like that play style. And the problem is if you think it's like playing control in 60 card, you're going to play Esper bad, right? Because you can never scale appropriately for CEDH, right? Like 1-for-1 interactions are mathematically bad, right? In a format in which you have 4 players, right? And so there are going to be players who, I mean, this is the same thing I have with Tivit too. There's going to be successful Marneus players. There were successful Tivit players for a long time. The problem is Esper decks are still really hard to navigate, and not necessarily so they're not like storm level hard, right? But like they will get their wins, they'll put up good numbers just like blue farm players will, right? But at the end of the day, you can kind of know what to expect from Esper decks, and people are going to show up and they're going to, you know, jokingly aside, like they're going to do missionary very, very well, right? But they're at the end of the day, they're doing missionary, you know what I mean? Like and so they're doing the best stuff pretty well, but at the same time, it's not like you're going to have those turn 2s where they just like break your body in half like Bane and you're lying there limp on the ground, right? Like they're always going to be really, really good at doing some pretty cool stuff, you know?
Let's move to Stella Lee, who was, I don't know if like the biggest surprise ever, but definitely how good, or their continued dominant, maybe not dominant, but their continued big presence in CEDH was definitely surprising to me. And I know that you dabbled, so tell me a little bit about Stella here.
Yeah, I'm gonna get this one out ahead. This is, boy oh boy, is this a trusting fart. And the thing is if you learn Stella's play patterns, you're hard pressed to lose to Stella, to be honest. As it folds to creature interaction because you kill Stella. It folds to stack interaction because all of your win cons are 1 mana blue instants, which for those who aren't like deep into CEDH, it's the most counterable card type of all of CEDH.
Yeah, let me pull up the Stella jump scare then.
Yeah, exactly. Between Pyroblast and Red Blast and Force of Will and Flusterstorm, and you know, I could literally go on for at least 20 minutes of all of the pieces of interaction that stop this deck. Now that being said, there are good pilots out there who make this deck better, and I think it deserves to be considered a very good deck. Like, I really want to be clear about that. I think it has a lot of potential. The problem is that the play patterns can be disrupted early, right? But it's always kind of got to be a surprise, right? Like, if Stella's ever in the best position at the table, it's never winning that game, because if people want to focus on Stella, they can, right? And they just kill her before she does anything.
So it's got like Marneus levels of people preparing for it, or Esper levels of preparation, but it does not have the same strength in the missionary position because it isn't.
Yes, exactly. Right, like you can win a game with Marneus Calgar without ever playing Marneus Calgar, and like that, it pretty easily so, right? Stella, not the case. You can execute a breach line, sure, but you're an Izzet, and your tutors for breach are actually kind of bad, right? Yeah, someone also mentioned Curse Totem. It's not seeing play as much, but it is a hate piece that does affect this deck, and it does make it inconvenient. Now, once again, Stella has potential. Like, I can't stress that part enough. There are really good pilots who know how to find their windows. They know, you know, for example, one of the best things to do in Stella is actually to wait to win at instant speed, right? Like, a lot of the best times to execute this win, because you just play Stella with haste and you pass the turn, and everyone's like, okay, cool, yeah, Stella is just vibing. And then like you're in the middle of a counterspell fight, and Stella's like, look, I'll help, counterspell, and you're like, oh, thanks, Stella. And then something else happens, and you're like, oh, look, they're helping again with their counterspell, and you're like, oh, that's my second spell, so activate Stella's ability, and you're like, all right, yeah, sure, just flip a random card off the top, sure. And then everyone's like, oh, hey, this person still has more counter spells, like, what are we gonna do, Stella? And they're like, oh, well, I have this one spell, here's my untap effect, and you're like, oh, you're winning at instant speed.
Fuck. Okay, so sad day for our Is It Bestie, and then a new the first partner pairing we're going to look at today is Tevesh Thras, which is Sultai, and I have a sneaking suspicion that these guys' collective lunch got eaten by Glarb, because I can't think of why the fuck you would play Sultai in CEDH. Why would you play Sultai in CEDH?
So, funny enough, we are in the middle of what I am calling the Cradle Revolution right now. Which is directly referring to the fact that due to the work of some great pilots, Sam Black being a big part of this initiative, we are now in this place where mostly Thrasios combinations, right? But specifically the big three, as we refer to them at this point, would be Thrasios Tevesh, Thrasios Yoshimaru, and Thrasios Ragrak, right? And the idea is, you're gonna have to pull up a card here in a second. We're talking about specifically Gaia's Cradle in combination. Gaia's Cradle, for those who don't know, one of the most broken Magic cards of all time, and for some reason this is legal in Commander. To be fair, I also think the Gaia's Cradle strategies are actually really healthy for the format. They make for some really interesting gameplay, and like a board wipe still fixes the problem, right? Which I think is just a healthy play pattern, right? But specifically these combo with the card Aboro Breeze Caller. Breeze Caller basically gives you untaps on your Cradle and will allow you to go infinite with some cards as well. So you sort of have this non-deterministic Gaia's Cradle storming that you do, and basically the equivalent of your strategy is, okay, I play some dudes that do some stuff. Okay, cool. Now my Gaia's Cradle taps for more, and then I'm gonna play some more dudes. Maybe I'll play some tokens. Okay, cool. Now I have like 7 or 8 bodies on the field. Okay, now I can just start non-deterministically activating Thrasios, flipping a land, bouncing the land, untapping the Cradle, do it again, and just start going and going and going and going and going and going. You know, I would not describe this as a easy to comprehend strategy, but at the end of the day, you can really boil it down to Gaia's Cradle, very good, much wow.
What about Tevesh is so good that you would go Tevesh Thras over Tymna Thras?
So this is the this is actually one of my favorite concepts to talk about, because this is the only archetype in CEDH where you actually get punished for playing more colors. So playing more colors in this archetype. So for example, like actually a lot of the Rog Thras lists that you'll see are basically Simic with splashes of red, right? There's actually some versions of this archetype that,
in that damn near every 3-color deck that has red in it.
Yeah, true.
Boy, howdy,
right?
I love deflecting, swat, and gamble.
Yeah, well, exactly. And so there's actually even some versions of Rog Thras that have cut red entirely, and the only reason they play red is 1, Rog in the zone, and 2, because Flare of Duplication and Deflecting Swat don't actually require you to make red mana.
That's heinous. I feel so bad.
It's pretty offensive to the red players out there. But yeah, it's so this is an archetype where, you know, adding a 4th color for Tymna is even more egregious than adding a 3rd color for Tevesh, right? And also something Tevesh card advantage plus makes bodies for Cradle, something very good. 14 mana turn 3 type of thing.
How stressed is this making you, especially compared to other Thrasios pairings?
I feel pretty okay with a Thras Tev in the pod. Like, I think it's a trickle down deck, not because I don't respect it, but just because, like, you know, in the same way where like Marneus can exist in one of those 2 spaces, like I do kind of know what the deck is doing, right? At the end of the day, it's not even like it even loses one of its best tools in Culling Ritual, right? Because as a Gaia's Cradle deck, you don't want to be Culling Ritualing the board, right?
Yeah.
So, and to be clear, there have been many versions of this archetype that were before the Turbo Gaia's Cradle existed, but we're talking about like modern CEDH, like what is, like if you see this pairing, what is it most likely to be? And yes, there are versions of Thras Tevesh that are not specifically the one I've described, but this is the one that you will see right now performing well, right? The one that's the reason it's on this top list, you know?
It's good to understand. Now let's move on to my sweet baby who sucks brutally bad, Tayam. I guess I'll open with a little bit of my experience, and you can tell me whether that's par for the course or wrong. So I liked this because everything everybody was doing in CEDH seemed crazy. I saw a deck list for this where the primer was talking about, like, we are trying to do a Staxy game plan, then combo out from under our own stacks, because you can do an activated ability combo, or a number of activated ability-based combos with this 3 mana, remove 3 counters. You can do a lot of neat stuff with like Devoted Druid. You can do Luminous Broodmoth type shit, and you get a lot of little guys, and eventually those little guys can combo off in ways where you can still keep the board stacked. But when I played it, Maybe I was just a deeply unlucky person, but it felt like I could never mulligan to fast enough stacks that was anything more than a light suggestion that everybody not win the game immediately. And then you don't have blue, and so you're lacking you're lacking Rhystic Study, you're lacking like Fierce Guardianship. And so there's just a lot of me feeling like I was just as useful as the Atali player in terms of stopping wins, but I could not turbo as quickly as Atali. And part of that is just me not knowing the combo lines well enough. But it felt very sad when I played them.
Yeah. So let's look at a little card that I think helps describe why Tayam is in a tough spot. Can you look up Orcish Bowmasters?
No, I won't. I won't pull it up.
Yeah. So here's the problem, right? This is a full dissection right now, and I'm gonna do my best to give this very long history lesson about CEDH really, really quickly. TLDR, there was a period in time where Turbo came out, and this was like right after Flash Hulk got banned. And everyone was like, oh, these their Turbo decks are really good. Like Turbo Ad Nauseam is very, very powerful. And then there was the counterplay to that. The original rock, paper, scissors of CEDH was stacks, mid-range, turbo, right? Because stacks decks, also known as, basically permanent-based disruptive decks, like I play a Rule of Law, I play a disrupting, whatever it is. These decks came to the place where they said, well, turbo deck, you're giving up card quality in favor of speed. But if I resolve one of these pieces, your game actions are limited to one, and your bad game actions are never going to add up because the speed doesn't matter because you can only do one or two things per turn, basically. And then Bowmasters was printed. And this card basically invalidated a wing of the format. And so, for example, like Blue Farm has always kind of been around and been a problem. But like for a really long time, the bit was that it was one of the best decks in the format that never won a tournament, right? And then Bowmasters came out and that stopped being a problem because all of the decks that used to keep this deck in check got an arrow to the knee. It's the reason why Winota used to be one of the best decks in the format and then is now in the maybe not even playable category, right? One of my favorite decks of all time. Yeah, and so Bowmasters really is unhealthy for the format, if I'm being honest. We're sort of Stockholmed into him at this point. Yeah, if Orcish Bowmasters ever went away, I think the rock, paper, scissors dynamics of the format would actually become a lot more interesting, basically.
So if you see them at your tables, are you like pitying them more than you're worrying about them?
Oh, it is the breeziest little fart I've ever seen at this point. Yeah, like it is just... And to be honest too, like starting off playing stacks decks, I now also feel like one, right, like it's an extremely difficult archetype, so I'm assuming that they're not playing at 100% capacity, right? And even if they're a very good pilot. And two, I spent so much time playing the decks that now I have the read of I know how your brain works in this situation. Right. So I'm playing around you too.
Okay, then let's move to the last of the 8 we had set for today. The other Thras pairing, Thras Yoshimaru. So you are giving up Big Black Card Draw Man for Little Tiny Dog Man, who I presume this is a, hey look, Gaia's Cradle body angle. Are people trying to kill people with the dog? That's the burning question.
Unfortunately not. I do.
No! Come on!
Yeah. So this is the one I've opted into. But I mean, I've played the Turbo Cradle strategy once. I played Yoshi Thras when I played it. There's subtle, intimate reasons for like playing this version, but realistically, at the end of the day, it's for silence, right? And the silence effects that exist in our format. We're talking about Voice of Victory, the card Silence, Ranger Captain of Eos. Those are all really stupid magic cards, right? They basically say, yeah, no, and look, I get that you could counter some spells, and I get that you could sequence things, right? But what if I just played a Voice of Victory and won the game instead? Also, it's 3 bodies for Gaia's Cradle, which is so dumb.
That is brutal. I did not think about how good the mobilize angle is just because it's end of turn versus end of combat. That's disgusting.
in this deck, I've used it for Gaia's Cradle. In black decks, I've used Diabolic Intent to sack one of the little dorks, and like just now it's a free sacrifice, or Culling the Weak, or whatever. Like any of these cards that have real downsides that you have to sacrifice a creature, Voice of Victory is like, no, here's one of my extra guys. You can have fun with him. Like,
Take this one. Red Rover, send worthless token on over. Okay, so are you more worried about the Bant version because they might shut off your ability to interact?
It's honestly a really good question. I think you can put it in Trickle too, right? Like, and once again, like it and the Sultai version are both really good decks, right? Like, I don't want to disrespect the potential of these decks. I think they're some of the best decks in the format. The problem is they're really hard. Like, especially because if you can pull up a Boro again, right? One of the things with this archetype that makes this archetype broken is when you enter what I call non-deterministic cradle storming, right? It's basically at this point, because Thrasios' ability allows him to put lands into the battlefield directly from the top of your library, there's gonna be a point in which you have found the perfect window to just start putting lands off the top of your deck in, untapping your cradle, and then going again, and then going again, and then it's cheaper, and then you're doing it again, and then you have more bodies, and then you're doing it again. And it's not easy, right? Like, it is the effectively you're storming, it just looks different than is it, right? Like,
Right.
And so to expect that every pilot is capable of that level of play with it, and to make this deck live its fullest potential, I don't necessarily know that that's true, right? And it's very easy to really beef it. Now, that being said, this deck can then adapt the mid-range role and then just wait till it has so much value that it doesn't matter that it didn't mess up. You know what I mean? Like, it can play bad, but have so much value that it doesn't matter. And so that's why it's still a very respectable archetype. But I think, in general, I think the people who can maximize this deck will make me full diamond, but I don't think the average pilot will be able to be capable of that. You know?
Okay, so yeah. All right, Peaks Diamond Producer. Most people are waiting. Like, if they can find the line, then it's a diamond producing deck. In most cases, they're going, well, what if I wait until I have 30 mana, and then if I waste 12 of it, who cares?
Yeah.
All right, so those are the 8 we actually got perfect 2s, and none of them are diamonds, which does kind of fit with them being outside of the top 10. Let's talk about 2 of the new Final Fantasy commanders. We touched on VV earlier, but we touched on them in terms of power level. If you're sitting down against a VV, how twisted up are you getting?
I think VV is going to be so beloved. You know, I think people are really gonna love this
Everybody
deck.
brace. He's about to say some mean shit.
I think they're gonna play this deck so stupid. I think people are gonna mess this deck up so bad. I really do. So I'm hearing a lot of reports from players that they have been picking up the deck, and they're like, you know, it's just with my friends, but I'm at like a 70% win rate with the deck. And God, a part of me wants to believe it, but like, I want to
trust you.
I want to trust the average pilot with it, but I feel like this will be a perfect middle of the road commander, because I think the hype for this character and this card in CEDH is really, really hyped, and it's a really cool thing, and I think it's really appealing for people. And so because of that, I'm expecting to see a lot of people who play this deck very badly, and I feel bad saying it, but like, because of that, I think I can only ever put it at Kegel at max, right? Because I know how many people are just gonna beef it so bad. You know, like people who are just going to be like, the first opportunity I have to cast a Curiosity, I'm going to do so. Yes, everyone has 4 mana open, but it feel like for some reason God has touched me today and it's gonna work. That's
horrible, and I'm going to say a sentence that's going to make me feel bad, because this is my new favorite commander. But is it Kinnan? Only in the sense of, like, because I'm remembering when we talked the first time about Kinnan, you talked about how the way to identify a good Kinnan pilot was a lot about when they tried to rip that first activation. And this kind of sounds like so maybe not fully is it Kinnan, but there's a similar through line of they're just going to go like, Commander Curiosity, do I win? I asked nicely, do I win the game now?
Yeah. I think Kinnan has a much higher ceiling than this deck.
Oh, like, yes, I would agree. The Kinnan deck is much less ephemeral to having their fat child shot one time. But like
Yeah. For example, I've had many hands with, I had to, so I spent an entire week prepping to play VV, right? Like to the point where I was anxious about bringing it because I'm a big mulligan guy, right? Mulligans are so important to the way you play CEDH. And with VV, I don't know how to say this other than you have to keep bad hands. Because you need so many cogs to make the engine work so that every hand that you keep mathematically will have one thing wrong with it.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's very confusing and it's very weird. And a lot of people would see the hands that I kept during the course of the tournament. It's like, that's not a hand you've ever suggested anyone keeps ever. But because you have to just accept the fact that you have to play to, okay, I need to draw one piece, and what's the piece that I have the highest redundancy of drawing? And also, it's a deck where if you jam at the wrong time, I've goldfished opportunities with Vivi where I'm like, okay, what happens if this spell gets countered? Oh, I don't do anything for 8 turns? Okay, the game's over, I've lost.
God,
right?
yeah.
So that's where as the Shakespeare folks would say, that's the rub, right? Like that's where things go really wrong with this commander. And so Kinnan, worst case scenario, plays a bunch of mana, flips a Kinnan if they run out of cards in hand, right? But for the allegory that you mentioned, where it's like really important about finding your correct window, absolutely agree on that aspect for sure.
Okay, and then now let's talk about one who I feel like I saw you talk about investigating this, and I saw Ben Bateman talk about how, like, oh, this is going to be so funky. And this was one of the few times I actually replied to somebody else's Instagram story to call him a fucking maniac. This is the Wandering Minstrel, who is a 5-color. I was reminded this is not even Amulet of Vigor in the command zone. This is Spelunking in the command zone. So I don't believe in this at all. I do think there was some initial being like, oh, maybe we get Spelunking and Deflecting SWAT. Ooh, lucky us. And you have all 5 colors, so you can just put in a bunch of good cards potentially. Now that the like reveal hype has worn off, do you believe in this at all for fringe, for reliable playability?
100%. Yeah, I do.
Oh, God damn it.
There are 2 avenues to pursue with this commander, right? There's one which is like Secret Commander Lumra, basically. Yeah, if anyone is not familiar with the fact that Lumra is a very real CEDH deck, fun fact. It is a 50 land CEDH deck.
Jesus
Scryfall
God.
will eventually
The green
support
players
our...
don't deserve it. So I have Lumra's text burned onto the inside of my eyelids. It's an asterisk. I think on ETB it's mill 4. Put all lands from your graveyard to the fucking field. And then it's like Vigilance, Reach, power equal to lands. I think it might have an extra ability on top for no goddamn reason. But I'm not positive. But I am positive. Yeah, it's just ETB mill 4. Get all your fucking lands.
Tapped, to be clear. But yeah.
Right, unless of course you had some
course.
dipshit musician.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I kind of believe in this archetype is December, we had someone actually top cut a local tournament with Arkelos, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one.
I am, because I fucking because I messaged Ben. I said get Arcalagos plus Deflecting SWAT out of my goddamn feed for Arkelos. I spelled it wrong, but yes, I am.
The thing is, Arkelos costing 4 is very real. The Wandering Minstrel costing 2 is so batshit crazy good. I'm like, I cannot stress enough the 2 mana engine in the command zone for a 5-color deck is not okay in a very cool way for pilots, right? Okay. I really like this deck because it expands what is playable in CEDH, right? Like whatever Wandering Minstrel deck you are seeing will not play like anything you've seen in the format unless it's like Lumra, right? But it's in 5 colors, so it does it way different. So as I mentioned, 2 builds, right? There's the Lumra build, which you can also consider like the Splendid Reclamation build or Aftermath Analyst, basically any number of big dumb cards that say, take all the lands in your graveyard, bring them to the battlefield tapped. Wandering Minstrel says, no, they are in fact untapped, right?
Unless.
Scape Shift is another great example of this, right?
Lord,
throw everything graveyard, bring them all back. And Scape Shift at some point becomes like a 6 to 10 mana ritual, right? Like just really dumb stuff like that, right? And that build is probably a sort of mid-range accumulation of value that will win because it operates on an axis that is just so foreign to the environment of CEDH that you're going to have a really hard time actually stopping them when they're going.
I presume you haven't gotten to do a lot with Minstrel yet. Where are you going where would you project this man might be? Like, what do you think floor ceiling?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a trickle deck because of the fact that right now, I think
overshooting this commander's potential would be foolish. I think
Mhm.
it's really powerful, and I can see a lot of archetypes being built around it. I think it's super unique also, right? A 5-color turbo lands deck is a really interesting series of words that I've just strung together, right? And so it's so undefined and so unknown that I don't want to overestimate it, but I do think it has a lot of interesting potential, and I could see, I don't think it's ever going to be like a defining deck, right? Like because of, once again, back to that old chestnut, no card advantage in the command zone, right?
Right.
But I could see it being a real player from time to time, right? Because at the end of the day, like, you have all 5 colors. Like, you can always play Aristic, you can always play an Esper Sentinel, you can always just play good cards too, right?
Okay, that's going to be it for today's tier list. Before we go, everybody, please follow, subscribe, watch Comedian's videos if you don't already. He is incredibly knowledgeable. He is incredibly funny. He can make you a better CEDH player if you are getting into the format.